Majora's Mask should never be remade. On this episode of Why This Matters, we're going to look into how a duplicate copy of Ocarina of Time makes a great game. Modern stories in video games, in my opinion, suck. With all the remakes and remasters now being playable and easy access to gamers, now that gamers are able to experience the same beats and plot lines as before, but in a much more upgraded setting, thanks to a high definition remasters being made. I find this to be amazing, as it allows modern audiences to enjoy the plot of a game and not be bogged down by the limitations of graphical settings. But for us more seasoned gamers, it's the same story as we saw 20 or 30 years ago, but with a new coat of paint. However, there are a few games that circumvent this restriction of graphical settings and withstand the test of time, as graphics don't play a role in the narrative of the story. Some examples of this are the PlayStation title Metal Gear Solid, as its almost codec call style comic book narrative goes over the plot in detail with very, very well done voice acting. Or the Final Fantasy series, as those graphically do not look the best for their time, but being complex narrative plots and stories, it's like watching you're getting an entire binge watch season of show by just through the aspect of a video game. But one of the best games that's able to pull this off emotionally is Majora's Mask, and how you can use the same assets from one game with what feels like an upgraded mod on the cartridge version of Ocarina of Time, and what's been transitioned or changed into a deep emotional story on how Majora attempts to destroy the world of Termina with the power of the moon, exploring deep topics such as grief, denial, anger, sadness, and acceptance, to tell a wonderful story about a young child's struggles to save the world of Termina from literal doom. Spoiler warning for Majora's Mask, which is a 20-year-old game. To start this off, we gotta look at where this game came from, and Majora's Mask was essentially developed from the birth of Ocarina of Time. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was developed in approximately 3 years. Development began in 1995, shortly after the release of Super Mario 64, and the game was released in November 1998 for the Nintendo 64. The development team at Nintendo, EAD, worked extensively on the game to create its vast world and innovative gameplay mechanics. And the memorable storyline of Link saving the world in a 3D setting from Ganon. And it took about 3 years to make this game. The Majora's Mask was developed by the same team and same director, but because the assets were already created, this game only took about a year and a half to 2 years, much shorter than the first one. Development started shortly after the Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask was released in 2000 for the 64 as well. And like many games, the development process likely involved various stages of planning. What helped this process be so successful was utilizing similar assets from Ocarina of Time. This is like the example of using the Unity engine in today's times, where people can just copy and paste assets. If you played the game for even the slightest amount of time, Majora's Mask, you can already tell the development team put a strong focus on making every connection of the story woven like a complex web of plots. Having even the slightest alteration in your actions created a longer connection to a plot point within the game and its surrounding areas, unlike Ocarina of Time, where every section had its own separate plot points and narrative. For example, in Ocarina of Time, the forest temple was in the woods, and you need to go get the hookshot to have access to the woods. So you do the digging minigame, get the hookshot, and then go to the forest temple and proceed to beat the boss, getting the bow. And then go to using that to unlock the next dungeon, which was require the fire tunic, so you can go into the Gorgon dungeon and rinse, repeat, and you just kept doing this over and over and over. Honestly, if you think about it, it's pretty linear. Now in Majora's Mask, this still happens, such as with Mask being able to log areas and sections. However, where it becomes more complex is, instead of needing an item to acquire the next being led from plot point to plot point, you as the player have the privilege of seeing and experiencing your heroism change the areas around you in a positive way, making it feel as if you were making a difference to each area. Removing the poison from the swamp, and seeing the joy of the Deku people as you save the princess from the kingdom. You knew your actions had weight. You knew, and not the repetition of just an item or some boss you beat from an area. It just gave you an emblem and moved to the next area. I can't express how joyful I felt when I removed the poison from the swamp, and genuinely happy that things were positive. You could see fresh water, and to have it all ripped away when you reset time because you know that timer at the bottom is going to kill you. My heart sank. It felt terrible. Knowing that this joy was temporary until everything was repaired was devastating to my young little teenage brain. In Ocarina of Time, this emotional detachment doesn't happen. You get the gems, you get the 3 gems, but again, that's just an item. There's no impact on the story other than a requirement for you to move on. Majora's Mask took the follow the main path story and added depth by adding emotions to your actions.
Whoa, this is heavy.
Majora's Mask took 2 very important things from Ocarina of Time. Assets that were used very little in Ocarina of Time, given much bigger roles, such as the mask system from the Happy Mask Salesman and the Skull Kit, and made them into major players into the game. It's as if they took the whole side missions of Ocarina of Time and made it into the game itself. I love that the main protagonist of this game is what a minor character was in Ocarina of Time, the Skull Kid in the Lost Woods. It's refreshing to not have the main bad guy be the normal, bulky Ganon that was used in almost every other Zelda game. This exclusion not only gave the players a fresh rebranding of Zelda games by utilizing the similar aspects of the games, but its previous rendition allowed us, the players, to re-experience Zelda in a whole new light. Not only that, but by keeping everything in game as in the game engine, devs were able to reinvent ways NPCs were used, like the levers being used as a minigame, or the Mario Brothers at Longline Ranch being bandits to stop you, just extra little flares that made the world feel more alive. In addition to this, we also got to see way more kingdoms of the world of Zelda fleshed out before Breath of the Wild was even a thing, such as the Zora's underwater music world or the Deku Swamp Kingdom, places we never even thought to exist. Another funny example is having the witches be helpful NPCs. It's one of the near-end bosses of Ocarina of Time. It's such a nice sprinkle of flavor where things in this game, they look the same, but they feel differently. It's as if the game's primary goal is to have you sense of relatability, but feel as if something's off or not right with the world of Termina, as if it's not really real. On the topic of the world, the game plays mostly the same. You get items, use first-person view mode to aim, and play music to alter the flow of time, but one of the major differences in how combat works. And in Ocarina of Time, combat in this style was one of the first of its time, and it had a major problem, because story and gameplay were very separated. There's a link, go watch Sequelitis by Eagle Raptor. This video is hilarious and amazing and actually goes into great detail explaining how story and combat are 2 very different things. It's like oil and water. They just don't mix. This does a great job making this connection, the difference of Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past. And Majora's Mask takes the same battle points, but with the changes to the time restriction and the 3-day system makes the gameplay no longer a wait till you have an opening. Majora's Mask, if you wait for an enemy to make an opening, you won't win. You will lose, as it is as if every boss is designed to not really defeat the player, but to waste your time. Majora's Mask, there are 4 major dungeons, each with a unique boss at the end. In the Woodfall Temple, the Masked Jungle Warrior, this warrior punishes you if you take the battle like a traditional Ocarina of Time boss. You can't hold shield and wait for an opening to punish for high damage. You have to counterplay and predict his motions and actions before you strike. It's as if you're playing footsies with an actual opponent in a fighting game. If you stand where you're waiting, most people do, and their first time fighting it, you will not even hit it. In Snowhead Temple, Goats, G-O-H-T, the speedy goat, this boss is focused on running away. He runs away from you, spamming projectiles. It's more like an endurance race, not only versus time, but versus the boss. While he has his lightning attacks and rocks that can fall from the ceiling, these can hurt you, but they more create obstacles for you just to get to the boss so you can land an arrow to stop him. For novice players of this game, this can easily run out the clock if they don't take the fight to the boss. This is a strategy that's unlike anything in Ocarina of Time. In Great Wave Temple, the Water Temple, which is one everybody hates, Gort, I will never say that word right. The boss is not only an underwater battle, which forces you to utilize the only way you can go underwater, the Majora's Zoran mask, but allows you to fight him on land when he allows you. So you have two real options to win. Fight him on his turf, underwater, where you're not super familiar with the underwater mechanics, which can make it trickier, or fight him on land and wait for the fish to come to you. Again, wasting your precious time, thus limiting the ability for you to win the fight in the first place. And the final one, and this boss I don't like, is Twin Mold in Stone Tower Temple. The dumbest boss of the game, arguably. I honestly swear this boss doesn't do anything. I swear I've never seen it attack. Rarely attacks because it's just huge arena and it's just focusing on, and it's a testament to see not only your archery skills, because you can't really lock on target him, it's really hard to do, but it's a huge arena that with lock-on targeting that doesn't really work. This battle is a true testament to your abilities, as you don't want to waste your ammo and magic. In Majora's Mask Remake for the 3DS, they added a mask that makes Link a giant and where he can attack the flying words directly. This makes the fight a lot easier and a lot more fun in my opinion, so simply put, the time mechanic of this game itself was a boss, and it's a testament to how you, the player, manage yourself, your time. No more waiting for your actions by pressing the correct button to counter, like Dark Ganon Battle or Bongo Bongo or Twinrova. Hold shield until there's an open. No. Majora's Mask was able to use similar assets to make a world feel the same, like Ocarina of Time, but utilizing not only more interesting bosses and taking some of the feedback from the previous game, but you as the player itself to have an emotional attachment to these places and worlds, because the story is so interdriven to everything else in that game. You feel bad and good when people win. You feel good when worlds go back to their miserable state because Majora is ruining everything. He feels bad, and that's good because it makes something memorable. Majora's Mask is a fantastic example of why you don't need top-of-the-line device or graphics to run and tell a fun and compelling complex story. With the power of very strong writing and a good storyboard and a little sprinkle of tingle magic, you can have a fun, compelling experience similar to your favorite book, movie, or video game, and that you will feel attached to emotionally for the rest of your life. Graphics don't make it a memorable experience or game. The emotional connections one has with the game makes it the memorable experience itself, and Majora's Mask fully delivers this. That's why I personally hope that this game never gets remade, as it might dilute the original context of what's wonderful art piece of a video game. And that's why Majora's Mask matters. What's your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below, and I appreciate you for watching. See you later. Ciao.